Have you ever been camping? I'm not talking about the namby-pamby kind of stuff that they call camping now. I'm not talking about glamping. I'm not talking about caravanning. I'm talking about real camping. And you'll either love it or you'll loathe it. I've got mixed feelings about camping. The first time I ever went camping was with a kid, not with a kid, as a kid. And it was our youth group, with the youth group that I attended. Mom would probably never go camping. And anyway, this camp that we went to was on the site next to a river. It was idyllic. It looked beautiful. It was the rough camping style. So there was the fire and all this kind of stuff going on. It was great. Until in the middle of the night, the farmer came along and he said to us, you need to get a move quickly because the river's flooding. That was my first experience of camping, such a shock. And then I remember the first time that we went camping as a family together. The kids were young, perhaps 2 and 4, maybe just a little younger than that. And we went on a week-long Christian festival, so we camped there. And that's not dissimilar to other festivals that you see on the telly that's going around. It's rough camping, it's on a showground. Essentially, it's just farmland. There's no electricity. The toilet blocks are few and far between. They're concrete blocks. The showers are there just to shower off kind of sort of like farmers during the show. So really you need to pick your time when you take a shower because the water runs out. Anyway, I remember on the first night, it had reached that hour that everyone dreads when they're camping. Everybody dreads this hour. It's about at 2 o'clock in the morning. It's freezing cold and you need the loo. You put it off what seems like ages and ages and ages. But of course, nature calls and soon takes precedence. So you slowly unzip the loudest sleeping bag in the world and you hunt around for a bit to find what feels like another jumper. You put it on and you venture out into the great unknown. And I say the great unknown because it's absolutely pitch black. You can't see a thing. Remember, you're on a festival site and there are no lights. So you wonder, how on earth am I going to get my bearings? And the first light you see is when you look up, you see these twinkling little dots in the sky and you go, stars. And this fleeting thought just crosses your mind. Perhaps I can use those for guidance. But anyway, you look down and you see that fine dot in the distance and it's the light of the toilet block. You eventually make it to the loo and you let nature take its course and then suddenly realise as you start looking down that the jumper that you put on is totally inside out and it's the wrong way round. But anyway, you decide not to fix that. It's just far too cold. At that point, you leave the toilet block and that is when terror starts to seize your soul as the question starts to cross your mind, where is my tent? Blackness surrounds you and the only thing that you can see is the gentle small glow of the nearest tent pegs being lit by the toilet block. It's quite a surreal experience because there's the sound of this sweet, gentle snoring filling the air all the way around you and you're standing there in a small sweat. Then and only then do you think that it was worthwhile spending those extra 5 minutes of hunting around and maybe waking somebody in the tent so that you got the flashlight before you left on this adventure, before you left on this expedition. So I set off back in the rough direction of where I thought my tent was. You would have thought that, it was going to be easy, but who would have thought that that journey would have been so perilous? You could not have possibly thought of the hazards and dangers that were lying ahead. Well, my journey started well. I stuck to the well-marked out walkways that were around the site. You could see them and hear them because slowly fluttering in the wind is the hazard tape hanging from the Y-hooks. Like I said, little did I know of the perils that were yet to come. I approached what looked like the edge of our field. It was scattered with hundreds and thousands of tents of all shapes and all sizes. Well, there was at least 50 of them. I might be exaggerating a little. The first guide rope I tripped over wasn't too bad. It belonged to a massive family tent. And although I stumbled a little, no one stirred. The second guide rope I wasn't so lucky with. It caught me out, and it belonged to a caravan awning, and I ended up on all fours, flat out on all fours. Well, after a few more stumbles and trips, I saw the promised land. There was the back of my tent. So in one last push, I went for it. The next few moments are still a bit of a blur to me. Perhaps it was the feeling of lightness, or perhaps the breeze flowing through the hair. But I suddenly realised I was flying. Now, flying isn't a natural gift of mine, so I was somewhat surprised. And as Buzz Lightyear puts it, it was more like falling with style. So my enhanced aerial view showed me the fast approaching two-man tent that was not where it was when I actually went to bed. I landed square in the middle of it. I was in the valley between two mountains. I was the rose between two thorns. I was the piggy in the middle. Now, I'm not sure who was more surprised, me or the couple I was now lying between. I can't remember what they said. And like all good Christians, I decided I didn't want to wait to find out. I got up, and fortunately the tent beneath me immediately reshaped, and I darted inside my tent. Relieved to be back in the safety of that little piece of canvas, I took a mental note to avoid those people. In fact, anybody that looked slightly bruised or battered or looked like they had a bad night's sleep, I decided I was going to avoid. Darkness is hard to navigate in, isn't it? And perhaps you've never had that kind of camping experience. But some of you, no doubt, have tried to drive when one of your headlights is bust or something like that. Either way, going out in the dark presents several challenges and loads of pitfalls. And we all like to avoid going out in those circumstances, but sooner or later, we end up out in the dark. Psalm 119, verse 105 says, "Your word is a lamp for my feet and a light on my path." In Hebrew, there's a big difference between the word lamp and light there. You see, the Hebrew word for lamp that's used is near. It means kind of to glisten or glow. And it's not really like the light that's produced. It's more like what the source of the light is. It's like a candle or a wick. So it's not talking about kind of a headlamp or a floodlight. It's talking about that glistening, shimmering, flickering source of light. In contrast, the actual word that's used for light in Hebrew is or, which really is more like the word flood lamp. It means to illuminate in every sense of the word. That includes lightning and happiness, as well as bright, clear day, morning and sun. So translating what the psalmist is saying in that verse reads something like this. God, your acts, your advice, your thoughts, whether they're written, spoken, that they feel like light to me. They floodlight my direction in life, making it clear. They make me happy, and they are like basking in the noonday sun. And yet they're so dim, and they're just like a little candle that's flickering. They do all this to my life. Just imagine what it would be like if I could hear you and see you in full light and in full splendor and in your full source of who you are. King David uses some of the similar words in Psalm 18 when he has been delivered from the hands of Saul. He writes in verse 28, "You, Lord, keep my lamp burning. My God turns my darkness into light." Matthew documents Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, and it's in Matthew chapter 5. And in verse 16, he notes Jesus is saying this, "In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven." So going back to my opening story, light is so important no matter how dim it is. Paul tells us that we now see but a dim reflection, but one day we're going to come and what we will see, we're going to see with clarity. We're going to see like we're looking at each other face to face. So now I only know things in part, but when that day comes, I'm going to know fully. I'm going to know totally, just like God knows me, just like Jesus knows me. And as I read the Bible, there's so much I don't understand. As I look around what's happening in the world today, there is so much I don't understand. And as I look at peoples and nations, there is so much I don't understand. It's like that journey across the campsite. It's pitch black, it's dark, there's things I can't fathom, there's things I can't see. And yet, when there is light, even though it's very, very dim, I can find my way to it. But when there is nothing but darkness, I may know where I need to get to, but the journey is full of so many obstacles and hazards. And some of those hazards, have been helpfully marked out by others, a bit like that hazard tape that I was talking about. But unfortunately, not everybody is going where I am going. It's almost like they're going to a different tent, they're going to a different place. So those hazards and those markings disappear. Then, without light, in the darkness, I'm left to trip, I'm left to stumble, I'm left to fall. But unfortunately, it doesn't stop there, does it? Because the landscape changes so much too, which makes the journey even more hazardous. It's like those people that had pitched that tent behind my tent, which wasn't there before I went to bed. Today, we venture out into the darkness once again. And as we venture out, where the landscape has shifted, where the landscape has changed, it's more important than ever to keep God's word close to us. You know, that's his written word, his spoken word, all the documented acts, all his revealed thoughts to us. We need to keep all of that so close to our hearts because his words are a lamp to our feet and a light to our path. And in this darkness where the landscape has changed, we need light. We need a lamp. And you may not understand what God is saying, you might not understand what he's doing, you might even find it hard to listen and read God's word. It's just a dim, flickering light. But can I encourage you to keep up the reading, keep up the listening, keep up the relationship with Jesus. And fan that flame, fan that little wick, fan it into a great big flame, into a great big fire. Because in that way, we're not going to stumble, we're not going to fall, and we're going to find our way safely. Because his words are a lamp to our feet and a light to our path.